Utah embarrassed themselves after their loss to BYU, but we shouldn't overreact to that.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with this, the greatest sport on planet Earth, whatever those stories may be. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You can get a big return right now. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Lots of things to talk about today. Texas and Penn State did something very similar, and I don't want it to go overlooked. Boise State and Indiana, what's our concern level after subpar performances compared to the standard that they themselves set for those programs this year? That's all coming up today, but let's start with Utah and BYU. So this is a wild, crazy, eventful game. And then Mark Harlan, the athletic director for the University of Utah, takes the mic and he embarrasses himself because he is supposed to be a grown-up in the room. He is a college administrator and a high-level one at that. You know how many individuals hold the title of Power 4 athletic director? I'm not doing the math off the top of my head, but I can tell you it's not a huge number because that just includes the Big 12, the ACC, the Big 10, and the SEC. He's an incredibly influential guy. And having the sentiment that he expressed in that post-game press conference is not the actual problem that I had with where he came down after that game. Having that thought isn't the issue. Expressing that thought, that's the issue there. Now, everyone's going crazy about this, but as I said in the open, I think everyone should relax a bit. Just a little bit here. He's apologized, he's been fined, and everything is going to progress. But as someone who doesn't have a dog in the fight here, it was a great day for the Big 12. It was a phenomenal day for the Big 12. How much did the stakes and the intensity and the energy between those two fan bases, which was already heated, how much did that just ramp up? How many fans in Salt Lake City right now are counting down the days until they get another crack at playing BYU? How many? I imagine it's a lot. Rivalries are not always pretty, and this wasn't a particularly pretty moment. No one, to my knowledge, was individually injured, though. All you had was a controversial call that one side's going to defend, that one side is going to criticize until the end of time, and did so immediately after the press conference, and you have just continued to raise the stakes. How many times in college football have we seen interactions amongst fan bases come pretty close to crossing the line without doing it? You can say whatever you want about those incidents, or this isn't good, or that wasn't good, but it raises the stakes. So Brett Yormark, in fairly strong terms, came out and said what Mark Harlan did was wrong. I think we can all see what Mark Harlan did was wrong. He had the reaction that fans should have, that people should have in the YouTube comments, or that people should share at Thanksgiving dinner at the table in a few weeks, which I love, by the way. Thanksgiving is maybe my favorite holiday of the year. That and Christmas, I go back and forth, but Thanksgiving, the food, chef's kiss, especially when my mom is cooking because she knocks it out of the park every year, but I digress. Those are the places to have those thoughts expressed. Text messages between friends, internet chat rooms. That's where that thought belongs, not in front of a microphone from the university athletic director. I am fully on board with holding officials accountable or saying we do not agree with this particular call. Mark Harlan has since expressed in a statement that he did not do it in the right way. He's correct to come out and say, all right, I didn't handle this correctly. I accept the punishment. We're happy to be a part of the Big 12. But he expressed what a lot of Utah fans were feeling. That's what he did. I can, on the one hand, I know this is hard for some people to understand, but bear with me here. I can hold two thoughts. On the one hand, Mark Harlan went too far. On the other hand, his head is absolutely in the right space. You are the athletics director for the University of Utah. Your fans feel cheated. They feel jogged. They feel deprived of a game that they really wanted to win because of a call that was made. You can agree or disagree with the call. But when you're the athletics director, what message do you want to send to your fan base? Hey guys, let's let's just quiet down. Let's not criticize the officials. They're out there doing their best. Is that what is going to endear him to those fans in Salt Lake City that were wearing red at Rice Eccles on Saturday night? Not really, no. So I think that a more measured approach to come out and say we're disappointed in the outcome and that call was made and we'll be reviewing it with the conference and getting an explanation as to what went down, that's what he should have done. Instead, he let his emotions get the better of him. He let the fan in him come out at a podium. That's not the way he should have handled the situation. So I don't think that he was in line. I don't think that he was right to go to the extent that he did to say the game was stolen. No, the game wasn't stolen. Officials made a bad call. And to then project this image of the officials have it out for Utah, why? Why would the officials have it out for Utah? I get this a lot from people. This call means they wanted it. We've seen this with Miami a lot this year. The officials want Miami to win. The conference just wants this. You can make up those conspiracy theories all you want. I can assure you, with 99.99% confidence, just because I haven't verified it myself, but boy, I feel really good in saying this, what you attribute to malice with regards to officials and conferences wanting a particular school to win is generally, or dare I say almost always, due to incompetence or a shortcoming or a bad moment or a bad call. You assume because it's happening to your team that there is a vendetta, that there is an agenda to make you feel bad. There isn't. There isn't. You're just emotionally invested. You want the right outcome to make you feel good, and you didn't get it there. You didn't get it there. So Mark Harlan should not be fired. Maybe he resigns, but I doubt it. He probably accepts the fine and moves on. He didn't actually mean, when you sit, look, I say this as someone who is aggressively single, has not been married before. When married couples have a fight, you get to a point, or at least from what I've seen on TV, you get to a point where you want to stop it before you say something that you don't actually mean. Mark Harlan may actually feel at some level that they don't want to be in the Big 12. And by all indications, this wasn't their first choice. This was a safety boat. This was first port in a storm. Get to the Big 12, be in a Power 4 conference. Do I think Utah legitimately, institutionally hates being in the Big 12? No. Do I think it's where they absolutely want to be? Also no. It was not their preferred outcome of all the realignment stuff. This was, I think Brett Yormark has handled this correctly from an administrative standpoint, though I personally am in favor of public accountability for officials because there isn't any, and that you get fined for criticizing officials publicly, but officials themselves face no repercussions with the people of whom their decisions affect in the public sphere. I object to that. I always have, I always will until something changes. It's not likely to. Mark Harlan's head was in the right place, which is I'm going to stand up for my fans. I have a responsibility to these people to go and act in a way that lets them know I'm on their side, that I'm leading their athletics department to have the most success that it possibly can. That's where his head was at. He didn't direct it in the right way. He didn't pick the exact right verbiage. But don't go overreacting thinking Utah should leave the Big 12 or that Utah doesn't deserve to be in the Big 12 or that you know what this did? It's another exciting chapter in a long list of an exciting rivalry with Utah and BYU. And guess what? When that game is played next year, how much more extra juice does that have? Brett Yormark shouldn't be shunning Mark Harlan. He should say, look, I need to hold you accountable here because I have to make it clear to everybody else. This is not okay. We don't tolerate that sort of behavior. But at the same time, in the back of his mind, Brett Yormark should be thinking to himself a private thought that he shouldn't express publicly, kind of like Mark Harlan here. He should have the thought, this is great. This is great. The interest, the intrigue that just got created around this game to hype it up to another level, to get to the level of an SEC rivalry. Yeah, it's in that conversation now because of this particular game. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. Texas, Penn State. Are they locks to the playoffs? Nothing's a lock in the SEC. But I tell you what, I was impressed with both, and you should be too. That's coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. And the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything, not some of the things, everything you need to place live bets on the NFL as well. I'm recording this as Sunday Night Football is ongoing. If you wanted to have a little action, a little juice before the game, during the game, it's all over there at FanDuel. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com, that's the place to go. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I would like to direct your attention, please, to two scores from this weekend that you probably didn't watch a lot of. Maybe you were checking out the early window and saw that Texas was beating up on Florida, and then you overlooked it. And then as the day progressed, you weren't really that interested in Penn State playing Washington anyway, because Washington was never going to hang around with Penn State and all these sorts of things. Okay, so I thought Texas would cover 21.5. They did. I thought Washington would cover 13.5. They did not. I'm going to talk about both these games. Let's start with Texas and Florida. 49-17, the final score. 19 of 27 was Quinn Ewers for 333 yards and 5 touchdowns. And I tell you what, Steve Sarkisian put on another play-calling masterclass on Saturday, because some of the concepts that he comes up with, a fake reverse, fake counter, reverse with the initial fake reverse as the lead blocker, I could watch that like Tom Haverford in Parks and Recreation. I could stare at it for 5 hours and just watch it over and over and over again. The screens he's got, the way he uses motion, that was the Texas offense at its finest. They have faced questions at points this season. Why? Because they haven't always been very good. I watched them play Georgia, who didn't look very good, again, on Saturday. And Texas didn't look great, and they couldn't move it on offense. And Quinn had to be taken out for a little while to put in Arch Manning, just, I think, to give him a rest, to give him a break and let him recoup his thoughts, which he did, and led a couple of scoring drives. You may be saying to yourself, Spencer, Florida isn't any good. Florida's not any good. Okay, Florida's not great. Florida's not terrible. If DJ Lagway had been able to play, that was always a smokescreen. For those that don't know, there were some reports flying around. Well, DJ Lagway could play. Like, guys, he was carted off last week. Let's pump the brakes. His season, unfortunately, is done. But Billy Napier is keeping his job, much to the chagrin of many in Gainesville. But Texas, the last time they took the field, put up 27 points against Vanderbilt. They won the game by 3. They lost to Georgia by 15 points at home, but they didn't score a point in that first half. So the last 2 times we've seen the Texas offense, and frankly, though the box score is impressive at a glance, 34-3 against Oklahoma, people who watched the Red River shootout know that was not a particularly impressive performance from Quinn Ewers, but this was dialed in. This was the Quinn Ewers that makes me look at Texas and say, yeah, they're making the college football playoff. So Texas being a lock to the playoff isn't a guarantee per se. They've got Arkansas on the road this week. I hope you don't overlook the Hogs if you were Texas. In a classic SEC showdown, I hope you don't overlook the Hogs. Kentucky at home, not as worried there. And then Texas A&M the last week of the regular season. I will confess, I have nothing against you, Arkansas or Kentucky. I have absolutely nothing against either of you, though I suspect both fan bases are looking ahead to basketball season a little bit. I want Texas to win both of those football games and set up a showdown at Kyle Field last week of the regular season. I want it. I want it so incredibly bad, because that would be a Utah BYU level spectacle where it has the opportunity to capture the nation's attention and then catapult that rivalry into a new stratosphere, because everyone realizes, hey, this is a really great rivalry. And when I don't have a dog in the fight, I love rivalries. So, speaking of dogs, a strong, passionate, rest easy to Ben Herbstreit. Was tough to watch Kirk Herbstreit on Saturday morning. That guy is the consummate professional for even showing up to work. If I'd lost my dog, as I did 3.5 years ago, and been asked to show up to work and go on College game day the next day, after that experience with a dog, taking him around and the country falling in love with it, I wouldn't have been able to do it. Props to Kirk Herbstreit for showing up. I wanted to get that out there. But back to Texas here. At 10-2, Texas is probably in. they don't actually have a great win that's holding up right now. Oklahoma lost to Missouri. That was not a very good loss. They lost to Georgia. Vanderbilt's no longer in the top 25. So Texas is back to what the committee was downgrading them slightly against Oregon in the rankings in the lead up to conference championship weekend last year. They're back to that area of, hey, when we play inferior opponents, we tend to beat them really badly. They could use that against Arkansas and Kentucky here, given the 3-point loss to Vanderbilt, who's going to be a bowl team this year, but also got housed on their home field by South Carolina. Nice game for the Gamecocks and Shane Beamer there. But Texas doesn't have a great win. So if they were to lose at Texas A&M, and they've lost the only games on their schedule at the end of the year that are against ranked opponents, I think 10-2 SEC'd be in. But of the 10-2 resumes, that's a lot closer to Missouri than it would be Florida's schedule. It's a lot closer to, so it could get dicey, is all I am saying. So Texas impressed me, but they still have more work to do. Penn State, on the other hand, impressed me a lot. Going into this game, I had this as, hey, Washington can hang around. They can do it. No, they can't. No, they cannot. That Penn State defense showed up, held Washington to 6 points, absolutely dominated. Drew Aller looked great. Andy Kotelnicki was in his bag as the offense coordinator, dialing up plays for Tyler Warren, and Drew Aller looked good. There were a lot of things going right for Penn State in this game. I'm not using this game as an opportunity to expunge the memories of the Ohio State matchup in which they lost by 7, but very easily could have lost by more, just as easily could have won the football game. Such is the way of life. Penn State, to me, is more of a lock to the playoff than Texas for 2 reasons. Number one, the schedule factor that I mentioned with the Longhorns. But number 2, Penn State doesn't have a game on their schedule where they won't be favored. Now, they have to go at Minnesota. And most people have not paid attention to PJ Fleck. They're not rowing the boat at a ferocious speed, but it's moving. It's going forward a little bit. They have to go to Minnesota in a couple weeks. They're at Purdue this week. That's barely a football team at this point. I don't know if Ryan Walters will make it to next season because there's a real possibility that Purdue is 1-11 after a 4-8 first year. That's going in the wrong direction there. So at Purdue, at Minnesota, host Maryland. Not worried about Maryland at home. Not worried about Purdue. It'll come down to Minnesota. Because again, I look at both of these teams, Penn State and Texas, and before the year, if you'd said, hey, Spencer, this team's going to go 10-2. Well, it's 10-2 Big Ten. It's 10-2 SEC. They're surely going to get in. Yeah, except there are more 10-2 SEC teams than we know what to do with. What if Texas loses to Texas A&M and Texas A&M is a 10-2 team, and Ole Miss could be 10-2, and Georgia could be 10-2? Just ask yourself this question, Penn State: how confident are you that wins at West Virginia, at USC, and at Wisconsin, with a 1-possession loss at home to Ohio State, and a win against Illinois as well at home? How confident are you that a 10-2 schedule there with a loss at Minnesota, who would probably be ranked if they win that game after the fact, how confident are you that you're getting in over 10-2 SEC? Because we could see a real lineup here. Bama, best case scenario and most likely scenario, is 10-2. They've got a cupcake, Oklahoma, and Auburn. I think Alabama goes 3-0 in those spots. 10-2, they're going to be in the playoff. There's an at-large spot. What about Notre Dame? Notre Dame has got USC the last week of the regular season, but they still have just the 1 loss. And Notre Dame took Florida State to the woodshed because Florida State is legitimately the worst preseason top 10 team I have ever seen. They could end the year 1-11. They legitimately could. I have no faith in them to win any game without even looking at their schedule. They've got Florida on it. I bet you Florida houses them with a 3rd-string quarterback. Florida State is just god-awful. Just a horrifically bad team. Don't watch them. Don't watch them. It's just bad for your eyes at this point. So there are a lot of things to be decided, and I'm curious to see how the playoff rankings come out on Tuesday, as I always am. But Penn State and Texas, these are 2 teams that did better. Well, Texas did what I expected. Penn State exceeded my expectations. That's a lean win for Penn State. No vibe on the whole for Texas, but some good vibes can go down to Austin because of the way that Quinn Ewers looked. And I know Florida didn't have their starting quarterback. Last I checked, he doesn't play defense. And that Florida defense has had some moments in the last couple of weeks. Texas looked like Texas again. Penn State looked like a good version of themselves. Which of those 10-2 teams do you think is more likely to miss the playoff? I think the answer is Penn State. because of the SEC factor. But frankly, either one of them could. I'm just saying. Once again, let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments if you think I am crazy. 2 playoff teams that struggled. Not 1, but 2. Boise State didn't play great. Indiana didn't play great. Wait, so what do we do with these teams now? That's coming up next. First, let's talk about Game Time, which has this feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on everything that you want to go to. Sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you're looking for, they've got it. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Game Time's just got it all. And you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app. Create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So Indiana finally looks human. Wins a game by just 5 points. Michigan covered. Michigan trailed in this game. They trailed by 2 touchdowns, and yet they had a drive at the end of the game to go down and win. Now, I felt a sense of optimism for Michigan going into this football game because I watched Davis Warren against Oregon the week prior and thought, yeah, he's a lot better than he was early in the season. In fact, he kind of looked like he did some things really well, made some good throws. Well, what do you know? Michigan, with a competent passing game, hangs around with Indiana. And I don't think the formula per se to beat Indiana has been laid out, as in they didn't do anything we didn't already know would work. Anytime you have a high-powered, high-flying offense, what slows that down? It's a great defensive line. It's a great pass rush. We saw it as recently as the national championship game last year. Washington had the best passing attack college football has seen since 2019 LSU, and yeah, Michigan took it away. 13 points in the national championship game. Why? Well, Mason Graham had one of the best singular games in a national championship a defensive tackle has ever had. The best that I have seen, frankly, since Nick Fairley with Auburn all the way back in 2010. They were just wrecking the game. Well, Mason Graham was there on Saturday, and Kenneth Grant was there on Saturday night. Isaiah Stewart was there on Saturday, and guess what? Yeah, it wasn't as easy. It was not as easy for Indiana to move the ball. So I don't think there's a new formula for how to slow down this Indiana offense. Now, those detractors of Indiana will say, they haven't played anybody. Look what happens when they played even a semi-decent team. They've got a lot of fodder this week, and you can continue believing that. It's a reality check for Indiana that not everybody you play is going to be dominated by your offensive line. In this Indiana offensive line, they had some sequences in which they looked really, really good. I think they're an incredibly underrated unit. But then there were some sequences where Curtis Rourke was under pressure. That hasn't been a consistent theme. They've been able to throw the ball all over the yard. They've run it pretty well too. But they've been able to throw it all over the field this season because Curtis Rourke has had time to throw. Well, Michigan, to their credit, on the road, played maybe their best defensive game of the year. Holding Indiana to 20 points, I mean, I don't know how much better it can get. In fact, it hasn't been better for anybody so far. So the question becomes for Indiana, how do they adjust? Someone found a blueprint that I think we knew in the back of our minds, but laid it out pretty clearly. The question for me is not how are they going to play next week, or how are they going to do this, that, and the other thing. They've got the bye before they play Ohio State. My question is not, does Indiana know how to make these particular adjustments? What about Curt Cignetti leads you to believe, I don't know if that guy can make adjustments. I don't know if he can do this, that, and the other. I haven't seen anything to lead me to believe that he doesn't know what needs to happen to play better against that style of defense, or at least not so much the style as a defense that has that caliber of players. My question is, how prepared are they going to be when they go to Columbus next Saturday? Not this Saturday, next Saturday, November 23rd. That is going to be one of the games of the year in college football. You're going to have 9-1 Ohio State, and you are going to have 10-0 Indiana. Did you know that before this season, Indiana in their football history had never had a 10-win season? They never had a 10-win season, ever. It had never taken place, and they've done it before the regular season is even over. So I think this was a great opportunity for Indiana, and I don't have a super high level of concern for two reasons. Number one, you can't play great every week. I don't care if you're talking 2022 or 2021 Georgia or 2019 LSU, or no one plays their best game every week. Top-ranked Oregon right now had Maryland at home. They committed 12 penalties, gave Maryland 6 first downs, allowed 18 points at home, which was 10 more than they should have allowed, or at least 10 more than, or 11 more than I thought they would allow going into the game. They didn't play that well. They still won by 21 points, but they didn't play that well. They're still worthy of being the number one team in the country. Nobody plays their best game every week. So Indiana gets thrown a punch from Michigan, weren't able to respond immediately in the game, but they found a way to win. That's what great teams often do. Georgia last year or year before, I don't know, everything's blending together at this point with college football. They've gone to Missouri and struggled before the Tigers were any good. And by the way, speaking of Missouri, Eli Drinkowitz saying, oh, we're in the playoff. No, you're not. Nope, I will not allow it. I don't know what power I actually have. I will flex whatever power I can find or talk to anybody who will listen to say, do not put Missouri in the playoff under any circumstance. That's not a college football playoff team, not even close to it. So Georgia has struggled with a subpar Missouri team. Georgia has struggled with Kentucky for several years. Sometimes you just have an off day. So my concern level on Indiana is not particularly high. And they've got the bye week now to try to make those adjustments that they need to make, whether it's schematically or technically with how their offensive line was playing. That's for the coaches to decide. Then they go play Ohio State on the road. I don't think I'm under or overstating things to say that's the biggest game in the history of Indiana football. So they struggled, but I wasn't all that worried about it. And I had the same thought about Boise State because the same premise applies. No one's going to play their best game every single week. So this game also wasn't quite as close as the final score indicated. Like Boise State had a 14-point lead late in the contest, and then Nevada got a big touchdown and whatnot. Nevada did some nice things. Jeff Choate's doing a really good job. Really good job with Nevada. They've been competitive in games that they shouldn't have been competitive in. They pushed SMU to the brink earlier this year. They played Boise State tighter than most thought they would. Boise State has got San Jose State, Wyoming, Oregon State. They win all three of those games, two of which are Mountain West games, and they're in the conference championship. And if they win that, they will be in the college football playoff here. Ashton Jeanty went for over 200 yards and 3 scores because, well, he's Ashton Jeanty, and that's just kind of what he does. But I again bring up Boise State in the same vein as Indiana. I don't want people to overreact to, wow, they only won by this much. Wow, they only did that. Yeah, it's going to happen. You worry about it if it happens more than once in a row. If it's 2 bad games in a row, if it's 3 bad games in a row and they're scraping by. Think about Miami, okay? These two teams right now, after one game in which they didn't blow somebody out, they're not on Miami's level. I said earlier this week when I reacted to the Miami game on Saturday that I wasn't all that surprised they lost to Georgia Tech. Why? They'd been playing with fire for a month and a half. I know they beat Duke by 22. They were trailing by 11 in the third quarter. The Hail Mary against Virginia Tech. The comeback against Cal. You can't do that over and over and over. Indiana and Boise State aren't doing that over and over. Now, if Boise State goes out this week and they play, let me pull up their schedule. They play San Jose State, who's not a great team. They won at Oregon State last week, but San Jose State, they're okay. If they go to San Jose and struggle again, then I'll turn my head and go, hey guys, what's going on? Maddox Madsen, are you still turning the football over there? Because if you don't do that, then you have the opportunity to just hand it to Ashton Jeanty, which is one of the most successful plays statistically in all of college football. So I'm not worried about him yet. I'm poking my head out the window, but I'm not climbing out the window to go intervene in the conflict that I'm witnessing. I'm just keeping my eye on it, seeing how it plays out. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.